for the project, working very closely with Jenna across Bury and Rochdale on our inclusive public services project. So Jenna is going to take you through the substance of today, but I'm going to just say a few words of introduction, really, a bit of the background, a bit of the why in terms of we're here and the project and how we got to where we are in Bury. So if you move me on to the next slide, Jenna, that would be lovely. Thank you. So, inclusive public services, the Bury and Rochdale experience, which sounds really exciting. So today is a bit of a virtual repeat of a workshop that we ran at the Workforce Summit at the Museum of Science and Industry. I'm going to say a few weeks ago, but how long ago actually was it, Jenna? Do you remember? A few months ago, probably, more like that, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if my mic was on or not, so I couldn't get off the other screen. Yes, it was the 7th of March, and I remember that because it was my
7th
birthday.
of March. Gosh, there we go. You would remember the day, wouldn't you? So 2 months ago. So this is the virtual experience for those of you who weren't able to join us. So a bit of background to this project. Some of you might recognise that picture on the slide there. That's from an event back in 2018, which the then Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership ran. Which was around a public service workforce commitment for change. Local authorities, health colleagues, Greater Manchester Police, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, all there, and all shared our understanding of the challenge around workforce representation in the public services in Greater Manchester, and all shared a public service commitment for change. And out of that commitment was born a number of activities, and one of those activities was a leadership for inclusion program, and my boss, our now chief executive, was part of that program a couple of years later, along with a number of colleagues from Rochdale. Those colleagues came together and said, right, well, we recognise through the leadership development that we've had that's not just the end. We've not just gone on a program that's talked about our commitment for inclusive leadership, but we've also made a commitment together to do something. What shall we do? In that context, COVID, in that context, Black Lives Matter, and there was a real commitment to one of my favourite slides there. This is obviously a gender inclusion diagram, but deeds not words is a motto I think really important that we all live by when we talk about inclusion. So what could we do? How could we take action around workforce representation? That work very much started in the context of race, but also we recognised the levels of representation and the challenge we face around disability is an equal challenge for us to face. So leaders in Bury and Rochdale, together with Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership leaders, said, right, what are we going to do about this? And how do we bring some capacity around it? So we applied for some funding. And we successfully received some funding, and through which Jenna was born. And the project that we applied for funding for was the Leadership for Inclusion project in Rochdale and Bury. And that's really about two things. It's around supporting our leaders and our workforce to understand more around lived experiences in relation to race and in relation to disability, and through which increase our organisational understanding and leadership and support development. And part of that was a reciprocal or a mutual mentoring programme. And you'll have heard lots about reverse mentoring before. I know there are a variety of different schemes run in different places, parts of Greater Manchester. And actually, as part of the extension of the project, one of the things we're looking at is understanding a little bit more about those schemes. I think our scheme is a little bit different. It's a little bit different because it's cross-organisational and the emphasis is very much on mutual, and we've supported a significant number of leaders and those with lived experience of race or disability through that programme over the last 12 months or so, and hoping to support more people going forward. But the other half of the programme, and what we're going to talk to you more about today, is the focus on our recruitment and our retention activity. Now, when we started that, the premise was we're going to talk to people, we're going to talk to our communities, we're going to talk to our communities of disability, we're going to talk to our communities experiencing racial inequality in Bury and Rochdale, and we're going to understand why a career in public service is not the place that people want to do. If you are a disabled young girl growing up in Rochdale, why do you not wake up in the morning and think, I want to work for Rochdale Council? If you are an Asian young boy growing up in Radcliffe, which is part of Bury, why do you not wake up in the morning and think, I want a career as a HR operative in Bury Council? Why is that the case, and how do we respond to it? And that was our premise, our starting assumption. And when Jenna went and talked to community groups across the two boroughs, across communities of place and communities of identity, exploring that question, what became apparent actually was that our starting question was perhaps not the right one. Yes, there were some reasons why people didn't want to work in those roles, but actually, you know what, a lot of people did. A lot of people did, but what they didn't understand was how to get from A to B, and there were perhaps some barriers and blockages that were in the place. So what evolved was our understanding, and Jenna will talk more through this in a moment, of 6 real big challenges, or I'd like to call them opportunities, to create a more diverse workforce. Those opportunities were absolutely directly informed by the things that our communities told us. And the work that we've undertaken is around thinking about how, as public services in Bury and Rochdale, both individually and collectively, we respond to those challenges. This is not about reinventing the wheel. Some of this is about looking at and harnessing activity that's already going on and giving it a bit of oomph. It's also not about a set of activity that is separate from work that I'm sure you'll all be doing around just general good recruitment practice in an era of really, really challenging recruitment. A lot of this is just good stuff that we should be doing and will support us to be effective at recruiting and retaining people. It just so happens that the impetus for this and where our focus is around disability and race. So that's a little bit of the background of where we've come from. Jenna, have I covered my bit, and shall I hand over to you?
You have covered your bit.
Thank you very much.
Can I just query? Thank you, Sam. Can I just query with you all? What can you still see on your screen? Because I can't see what you can see on your screen and my screen, and I'm confused.
So we're on slide 4 at the moment, but we can see they're not in slide view. So we've got all the other stuff there, but slides are in the middle. So perhaps if you wanted to just do it as slide view, that might be helpful for people to make the
when I do a slide view, I can't control my mic, so I'll just obviously leave it on for a while. That's why I was confused. So thank you for that. Yes, Sam, you have more than covered your fair share of what we've kind of been up to in the background. So as you can see, so what did we do once we kind of got that funding? So we looked at obviously why does this project exist? So we know that from data, our public services are not representative of the communities which we serve. That's across all levels. Especially the more senior roles that you get, you see less people that have got a disability or from an ethnic minority background. So what do we want to achieve from our outcomes to be increased number of people with those protected characteristics working within our organisations across all levels, career progression of our workforce with those protected characteristics, and senior leaders and managers in public services have a better understanding of the challenges that people face again with those protected characteristics. Impacts, public services better represent the communities which we serve, so people within our communities get a better service. Communities experience, sorry, I've just said that bit, and senior leaders ship roles are filled by more people with disabilities and racially marginalised. The next slide, Sam has pretty much covered. So what are we kind of doing to achieve those outcomes and impacts? So we've got the cross-organisation mutual mentoring, which is very much looking at the two-way process of a mentoring scheme. Rather than a one-way process, both people are viewed as the mentor and mentee. And as you can see there, just to kind of highlight that the exciting part is that this will soon be kind of scaling up to include Oldham and Salford, as with the other part of the project as well. So really exciting that you could be working over in Oldham and be paired up with somebody from Salford Public Service. And then the inclusive recruitment, which we're going to go into. I'll do a really quick whistle stop tour of why, the kind of background, you know, because it's quite easy to go, okay, so the data, what data is it that you're talking about? So some examples regarding Rochdale Council and Bury Council and the workforce data from last year. So that's on the right hand side, and on the left hand side is the census data. The census data, as you can see in the grey, is from 2011, and then the most recent census data is in the blue from 2021. So as you can see here at the top, you've got the two people and that have got a disability that is limited a lot and is limiting them a little bit, whereas this doesn't show through in our workforce at Rochdale Council, with people that have declared their disability at 4%. In the community in Rochdale, it's a lot higher. Moving on to ethnic minority staff in Rochdale. It's 14%. That is really high. So it's quite easy to look at this data and think, oh, we're not too far off. But then actually, again, it's that element of across all levels, and you'll see that if you get to more senior roles, then the ethnic minority staff aren't represented at those levels. And again, same comparison, but with Bury Council. People that have shared if they have a disability or not, 7.25% here on the right hand side. On the left hand side with the census data, you can see that we're looking at around 20% of in our community people that have got a disability. Okay, and again, Bury Council, Black, Asian, ethnic minority staff, just under 9%. And then again, the census data on the left-hand side is much higher. So, you know, it is worth considering that not everyone in the community that has completed this is going to be of working age, but we are aspiring to actually represent our communities in the future as they become adults and of working age. So, the 6 opportunities that Sam spoke about are here. So, you know, you might be thinking, Jenna, where have these come from? Have you just plucked these out of thin air? No, I went out to speak to people in the community, in our community groups, what people are experiencing, what are their perceptions and barriers. I think it's really important to highlight that there are barriers in place, and it's what are we doing to overcome them that will actually improve those perceptions. So, from those conversations that I had, I've pulled together 6 opportunities for change. And for me, this sits alongside also something that we as public services should be doing to retain and maintain our staff so that they stay with us once they're in. So this is kind of like what could be done externally, and then it's also for organisations to consider what can be done internally as well. And that could be the cross-organisation mutual mentoring scheme. So these 6 opportunities for change, as Sam said, they are universal. They're nothing that's completely new, but it's under the lens of what can we do to improve, for example, on point 1, perceptions of working in public services for people that have got the protected characteristics of race and disability. Very specific. So if we move on to point 2, what can we do to diversify our advertising of our vacancies? Are we advertising within the community? Are we relying on one source? And also point 3, what can we do to make application forms more accessible and actually relevant to the role? So there are lots of systems in place that can digitally, especially, that people come across. What can we do to kind of mitigate that and to make it more accessible for people? And one question is, do we need to fill out the form first? Can we actually form a conversation with people and then look at an application form? Point 4, what can we do to make interviews more accessible? So obviously looking at the use of language, but then also how we actually do our interviews. If you like, quote unquote, traditional interviewing is very face to face. Is that necessary for all roles? Can we look at how that might be done slightly differently, such as giving questions before the interview for all candidates, and maybe thinking about the cultural maybe challenges around language as well that might be present, and what we can do to change those. Point 5, job carving. How can we, this is a really challenging one. We when we talk about this, we're very aware that it's really challenging, but hope could be, has got the potential to be really great and successful. So is this something that we can make reality and part of our approach to advertising based on people's strengths? So thinking about the strengths within our current teams and what we actually need, and advertise specifically, whereas we kind of advertise roles with a variety of skill sets within it. Well, actually, can we look at what the strengths are within our team and then offer a very specific ask? And then point 6, what can we do to raise awareness of our reasonable adjustments? So usually, as it says there's just a paragraph at the end of the advert, but what can we do to really raise a profile of that so that people, it isn't kind of go to HR if you need reasonable adjustments. It's very much at the forefront of everything we do from the beginning of the interview process and the application process. So the next slide is about an activity. So you have seen the 6 opportunities for change that was on the previous slide, and I suppose for the activity, I'm asking if you had to pick 2 that would stand out to you, which would they be? I know, Sophie, you're going to pop a poll in the chat, aren't you? So people can have a vote. Are you there?
Yes, I'm just trying to press launch now, yeah.
Okay, Brill, thank you. So I'll go back. So the activity is going to be looking at in small groups. Hopefully there might be 2 things to discuss. So what's already going on around addressing this within your organisation or locally, and if there isn't anything, then what could be done to change this? So I'll put the 6 opportunities back up so you can vote on the poll.
Can everyone see the poll? Yeah.
Okay. So I can't see the poll because I can't see the screen. So has everybody voted?
So yeah, if you could just vote on which opportunity of change would you like to explore within the small groups, improving perceptions, diversify the advertising of vacancies, make application forms accessible and relevant to the role, make interviewing more accessible, job carving, or raise awareness of reasonable adjustments in organisations.
So can I just check, Sophie?
Thanks, Sophie.
We're putting them in order, aren't we? So the poll doesn't let us select one. We've got to put them in the right order and then submit. So is 1 the one where we think we'd like to discuss the most? It's not a poll where you can just select.
Sorry, yes, yeah. If you just put what you think is the most important to you that you would want to discuss, and then I think we're going to discuss the top 2, aren't we, in the groups?
Yeah.
Is that all right, Jenna? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Sophie. So yeah, using the arrows on the right-hand side, just shuffling them about and then submitting it.
So I think we've had all of the results in. 8 responses, is that right? Oh no, 9. I can't see how many. I don't know if you can see that, Jenna, but the top 2 are diversify the advertising of vacancies, and the second one is make interviewing more accessible. That sort of seems to be a tie though with improving perceptions.
Oh, okay. So we've got about 20 minutes to do this. So we can either go into 2 groups and discuss one thing, or we can maybe have 10 minutes on each and swap. What do you think might work, Sophie? Sorry, put you on the spot here.
So sorry, how long have you got? 10 minutes, is it?
You've got 20 minutes, so we
20
could
minutes,
we could
sorry.
split people. We could open
Yeah.
2 breakout rooms that you've created kindly. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, Jenna, and team, please write in the chat if you'd like to. I'm just thinking there's not a huge amount of us here today. There's only 12 of us in the meeting, and you've got me, Jenna and Sophie who are coordinating, so only really 9 participants. I'm just wondering if we might want to stay together and do 10 minutes on each. I don't know, it's entirely, and Jenna's probably smirking because I might have a habit of doing this and changing our mind. Just wondering, given the number of us, what do we want to do? Do we want to split into 2 groups, or are people happy to maybe have a facilitated discussion together? Let me know. This requires some of you to speak or write a comment.
Yeah. Oh,
This is the first test. First test.
I mean, that might be a better idea, because then at least if some people don't feel confident talking out loud and they're put in a breakout room, then there might not be much discussion. So if we're all together, then someone might lead. Oh, someone's just, Helen has said she's happy to stay in the group.
Okay. Let's do that then.
Yeah, we'll
So
stay in the group.
Yeah.
So the idea for the breakout, Sophie, have you got the Word document that I sent to you?
I'll put in the chat.
So we were going to break out and write up some notes based on the questions. Bless you. Based on the opportunities for change. So one of them was how do we diversify our jobs, and the other one was interviewing, if I'm right. So would anybody like to, I'm happy to facilitate the discussion if somebody else could take notes. Oh, you're an active bunch. Have you had like a really stodgy lunch, everyone? Is that what's happened? And you've gone, oh, can't concentrate.
How about I will happily take, let's do a double action, or I'll happily take notes for you.
Oh, I thought you'd never suggest. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so am I still sharing my screen?
I'm going to have to share the Word document, Jenna, because it doesn't seem to let me upload it as an attachment.
Okay, no worries. Maybe it doesn't matter. Sam can. It's not that much on it, is it? It's just the heading and then the 2 kind of point A and point B. So I'm sure, Sam, you can scribble that down, can't you? Thanks, Sophie. So when we think about, we'll go for interviewing first. When we think about our interviewing, I know a couple of people on this call, so I'm sure I can encourage maybe Denny and Helen to lead on this conversation, or at least begin on this conversation. So when it comes to advertising, is there anything that, I know the first question is, in your organisation you do, or that happens locally, that's really good around accessible interviewing? Would you like to share some of that with the group?
Yeah, I think we're just strong advocates of the working interview, and because a lot of our customers, especially with disability, they can demonstrate that they can do the job, but in a proper traditional interview, and processing time, answering the questions, it's very rare that we do get successes in that way. But if we can work more flexibly, we find that when a working interview has been put in place with sometimes minimal support and just basic awareness training for everyone, that's when we've got our best results. And we've been working really well with some of the department heads where we've really profiled that, and we've had employment outcomes as a result of it. Whereas I feel as if we didn't have that in place, these people who are fantastic at the job now and proving to be really, really successful and great workers, they wouldn't have even passed the interview, probably wouldn't even got as far as filling in the application form. And we've worked with department heads where they've not filled application forms, we've done the job trial, and literally it's been quite informal. Whatever's really the basics that requirements need to be done, they've kind of done it differently, so it's not been this massive barrier. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I just completely agree. And I mean, obviously, you'd think it probably lends itself more for sort of practical job roles, but there's no reason why you know, sort of office-based roles couldn't adapt a working interview. It's what we just try and advocate, certainly for our customers, is just allowing people to have that even playing field and just getting that opportunity so that everyone is considered equal. So a working interview really lends itself to for our customers to be able to demonstrate what they can do. And yeah, it's just been a great way of working, and just get some really good results.
And it's not rocket science, and it's not difficult. I think sometimes it's just allowing, you know, just our policies to be a little bit more flexible. I think we find managers are really willing to work with us, but they're frightened that, you know, are they doing something wrong? Is it illegal? So I think if we can firm up that, you know, then messages, yeah, it's okay, you can do this, it's fine to do that, you know, it's okay to be flexible within these areas, but we really define what that looks like. I think, you know, we're heading in the right direction. Yeah.
And one thing, if I
Okay,
can just
brilliant.
add one thing to that, because it's really good to work with the team, is actually, in order to do this at Bury, we didn't need to change our policies. There was a lot of almost misconception about what is and isn't allowed, and perhaps a view that things weren't allowed just because we hadn't done them. So one thing I'd ask you all to do is actually go back and read some of your policies around this stuff, and it might surprise you how permissive and supportive they are to more flexible approaches to assessment. I've got a bit of a pet peeve for the word interview. And my HR operations manager gets really annoyed with me because whenever she writes something, I'll just delete the word interview and put in assessment, because it's absolutely fine not to interview someone. I'd always say someone should be assessed for their appropriateness and capability to do a job, but that doesn't mean you have to sit in a slightly dodgy, in my case, council room in a town hall that's probably a bit damp and a bit cold, with a dodgy jug, and ask questions around, can you give me a time when you insert blank? Sometimes that is absolutely the right thing to do, but sometimes it's not. So flexibility really important. And actually, do you know if your organisations allow that or not?
Thank you. Yeah, Sue, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just on that. So I'm part of the ICB team that looks after the workforce development portfolio, and we've been doing some work with Northern Care Alliance in this space. I just thought it was helpful to share. Some of you are plugged into it already, but the cross-sector recruitment events for health and social care, they're focused around entry-level roles. And one of the key things we'd identified is one of the big barriers is the application form and track. It's not track as such, it's the requirement to write a personal statement and fill all these details out can be such a barrier for people, especially entry level. You know, we're expecting chief execs to fill the form out and entry-level roles to fill the form out. It's not adapted for everybody's use, and it can create such a literacy barrier for people. So through these events, we've been doing one-stop shops. So they don't fill the form out, they come along, they have a chat, see where there's a good fit, get interviewed, and then fill some paperwork out. And track doesn't start till after the offer's made. And even then, there's not a full requirement to complete it, you know, the personal statement. And I think that that's just something worth thinking about, especially at those entry-level posts, whether there is a way to make it more accessible to people. Yeah, just that comment, really.
That's great, thank you. That's really good to highlight the work that's already going on, and some of the things that we can do when we work together to overcome these barriers that are in place for people. Would anyone else like to add anything around recruitment, what they do in their role, or any ideas that they think that I don't know, you might have just recently got a new job or seen something and you thought, oh, I'm not sure about that. Could we maybe change that around our interviewing? Why do we do it? Please, it'd be really good to, you're on the call, so you might as well share something if you've got something to discuss. No, okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'll let you. Oh, go on. Great. Thank you,
Okay.
Holly.
No problem.
Go
So
for
I
it.
work for Greater Sport, so we're the active partnership for Greater Manchester. And I'm fairly new in post, so I started around 6 months ago now. And it was really kind of pleasantly surprised when I applied for the role that I did receive the questions in advance, so 2 or 3 days in advance. And it just really took that feeling off that it was an interview. I had time to kind of think of those examples. You weren't put on the spot, and it really helps kind of going into it as more of a conversation focus rather than an interview. So I definitely would consider that, even if it's kind of getting the question 20 minutes before. I think that would help as well. It's just that I think some people just really struggle under that really pressured environment of having to answer a question kind of instantaneously. So I think anything around that's really useful. And I attended the Include Summit recently, which is a sort of conference around EDI and sport visibility. There's a session on this. And one of the things they did say was that it only takes someone sort of between 5 and 15 minutes in an interview to make a decision in terms of kind of whether they like a candidate or not. So really the importance of, if you are going to go down that interview route, having a structure and following that structure and making sure that every candidate has the same questions in the same order, just to keep that fairness and consistency.
Thank you, Holly. That's really helpful. That is something that I've been speaking to colleagues in the sector about recently as well. Around we can do this. What do we need to do to kind of put this in place? And it's a really simple ask. Because if you were doing a presentation, you'd get the presentation topic beforehand, wouldn't you? So it's about those fears that people have, and maybe how we can reassure people to actually put these changes in place. I was also thinking as you were talking, Holly, that, you know, when we talk about some things that might need changing and getting the best out of people, which is what we want in an interview, isn't it? We don't want someone that's just going to be amazing on the day, but maybe actually isn't the best person for the job. We want the best person for the job. And actually, if you think about, I don't know if anyone's heard of the spoons concept. I can't remember the woman who first or made a statement about it, the biggest statement, but if you do have a disability, or there are any barriers in your way, let's think about mobility, and you arrive at a place of interview, you wasn't told that it was on the second floor and there isn't a lift, but actually you've got back issues, so your journey to get up to the stairs, you're not going to be in as better place, are you, as the other candidate? So that's what we talk about when we talk about leveling the playing field. Well, actually, if we can give as much information as possible so that people are able to put a bit of a plan in place, and that could be the interview questions around getting their head around it. That could also be about sharing the location, and making sure that buildings and our meeting spaces are accessible for different reasons, and obviously that includes digitally as well. So that was also a consideration I was thinking when you were talking. So thanks, Holly. David, thank you for waiting. Would you like to add something?
That's quite all right. Yeah, just to add to what Holly said as well, you can even do that with, as you mentioned, for instance, tasks such as presentations. Before I got this role, I had 2 interviews, with both of which asked for a presentation, one of which asked for one where it gave a narrative and said, please talk about this for 8 minutes, with no indication of kind of what format they wanted it in, whether they wanted it with a presentation or not, just kind of talk around this subject. The other one specifically said we are expecting a presentation. It then broken down into sort of 6 to 8 steps what it was looking for. So a successful candidate will show us these things. Obviously, you still had to go through kind of your explanation of how you would approach that task, but it actually stated these are the things we are looking for in this moment, because it's a very artificial situation, the interview. And I remember when I was interviewing a person for a role, and a question about how would you work independently or work from home, and one person said, oh, I'll do it with passion, which is obviously not what was being asked for, but the question was ambiguous. It was not what tools would you use, it was how would you do it. So technically they answered the question right, but that matrix, they didn't know how the question was being critiqued. So they didn't have that knowledge, and therefore were had to give 0 points for that, even though it was a perfectly legitimate answer to the question that they had received.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's part of being open to getting that feedback as well, isn't it? How do you make sure that you get you get that feedback. I was involved in a stakeholder panel just yesterday as part of recruitment here at Bury Council, and one of the things that I shared was it's really good if we're asking what other people's reasonable adjustments that they might need. So putting it on, okay, what do you need? That's really good to ask that. But then also what's really helpful is that if we know what tools we have, especially digitally, or it may be in our assets that we've got around different places to have interviews, and how can we make sure that we're doing something. So one example is that one of the people wasn't very clear on there when we were kind of on the panel. So I put my kind of subtitles on so I could follow a little bit easier. But actually, when we talked about it afterwards, somebody else did say that they were struggling to kind of hear this person. So it's actually thinking about, well, what can we do when we're presented with a barrier? It was kind of like they're not speaking clearly, but we can also have, well, what can we do to change that? You know, it doesn't have to be always on the other person to make that request or adjustment. Something I just wanted to share with you guys. Okay, is there anything that anyone wants to share regarding interviewing and accessibility? I am aware that when we have these conversations, it's really easy to talk about disability, but also it's really important to talk about race, including language and culture. So I know that's kind of touched upon in our oh, somebody's alarm's going off. Don't know if you can hear that. It's not mine. So I suppose, yeah, I'm not going to ask people to kind of directly feedback on that, but just a consideration really for us going forward when we're thinking about the things that we can change in our interviews and how are we going to level the playing field, if you like. Sam?
I suppose just on that, yeah. And this is a point that I think applies equally to disability and race, but also equally to just getting the right people for the job, is the way we write interview. Even so, leave aside my point around I'm not a big fan of interviews, but even when we write interview questions, or the way we talk to people, or looking at the comment in the chat there around what people wear, there seems to be a sort of a mystic code or language that is the language of the workplace or the way we do things, that if you know it, then you're fine, you're sort of almost onto a head start. But if you don't, then actually you are at a disadvantage. Now, sometimes, depending on the type of role, that might be the part of the assessment. So if you're interviewing someone for a chief executive's role, you would expect them to dress in the way of the chief executive or know the parlance of local government or whatever organisation you're through. But do you need that for all jobs? I suppose one of my colleagues, our head of communications, always uses a mum as an example, and I'll use my mum as an example. If your mum would hear an interview question and go, I haven't got a clue what that means, then it probably is not the right way to ask a question. And that's not about someone's ability to answer it, but just actually understanding what the questions mean. We use so much flipping public service jargon sometimes, and it's a really bad habit. And it's a habit that I think, if we're honest, a lot of us on this call probably fall into, because it's the way we do things. So again, just in terms of accessibility of the assessment process, the language we use, the expectations we put in place, and the type of examples we think about, how many of them are actually essential for assessment of someone to do the job versus how many of them are just because that's how we think it should be done in terms of public service recruitment.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Shall we move on and focus a little bit on the was it diversifying our adverts, which I suppose, going to the point that Sue made, it's all well and good having a different places of advertising, but if your kind of application process is challenging, then you might have the drop off. But obviously it's got to kind of all sync up at some point. I was aware that the last comment got missed, so I'm just clicking on the chat to have a look at what you said, David. One of your biggest pet peeves is entry-level jobs and asking questions about experience. Yeah, exactly. That reminds me of Persona Care and Support over here in Bury have been doing a lot of work around their inclusive recruitment. And one of the things that they've developed is their notion of three options, three outcomes from an interview. So typically it's yes, you got the job, congratulations, well done, when can you start? We'd like you to have started yesterday. Or no, sorry, you've not been selected. Thank you very much, goodbye. If you'd like feedback, let us know. But there is a third option, which I think is fantastic, of not yet. So with regards to experience, you might not have enough experience we might not have drawn that out of you for this role. However, you've got volunteering opportunities locally. You might be able to go to Bury Adult Learning Centre if it's around that learning knowledge set that might be missing. So really connecting to what services are available locally, and if you have that relationship and maintain that relationship, you can say, oh, I know Sue Scott, she works at Bury Adult Learning Centre, let me send her an email because we think you'd be a great candidate, but you just need a little bit of this. Or we'll speak to Bury VCFA and I know them, let me just send them a quick email. And then actually people feel valued, which kind of loops back into that first point of what are you going to do to improve perceptions? Well, actually, I applied for a job and I didn't get it, but you know what? It led me to this and I've not been kind of forgotten about. It's that stuff that can really make an impression on people and then actually make those people come back to your service and apply and get a job, hopefully, further down the line. So that kind of not yet option, I think, is really important. So it would be good to change the wording to accommodate lived experience. Yeah, I think when we think about experience, it's got a kind of silent word in front of it, hasn't it, of professional. It's got this, what's your professional experience? That's actually what we're saying. But really, if we say what in a different way, what is your lived experience? Oh, right, my lived experience. Oh, right, well, I'm a carer, or I cared for my granddad actually before he passed away, and I did this. Oh yeah, I've got actually loads of experience. I pick my little brother up from school all the time, you know. So yes, that's a really good point of actually being explicit. Yes, we use experience quite a lot, don't we? But what's your experience as a person with regards to this role that we're advertising? Thank you for that. David, would you like to come in?
Yes, so I was typing out my reply, but I thought it just easier to actually say it.
Yeah,
so yeah, 100% agree. One of the things, I think I've mentioned this to you before as well, Jenna, but when I was working with GM Talent Match at GMCVO, one of the things we recommended to employers was for entry-level roles, they kind of flip it around on the head and ask the question of, well, was there a time when you experienced if, for instance, in a shop-based role when you experience good service, and talk through that with the kind of idea that if someone can recognize this is a time where someone made me feel good, or there was a really positive outcome here and they remember it, they're very likely to emulate it, because many people won't have any experience of delivering it, but they will have plenty of experience of that was really good and I remember doing that, so I'm going to try that myself.
Yeah, that whole idea of people will always remember how you made them feel. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. David, that explains why I recognise you. I used to be a talent coach as part of Greater Manchester Talent Match as well. And I always didn't like the idea of neat young people. I always thought it was not yet. I'm not yet in employment or training, I'm not yet there. But thank you for that input and for sharing your previous experiences. Yes, so Holly, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just a quick one really, just some more learnings from the summit, just around kind of inclusive job descriptions and job ads and the language element. So even just things like, especially when it comes to disability, things that kind of words and language that relates to kind of physical ability. So, we're looking for a dynamic individual. Words like that can actually have a really kind of subconscious effect on people thinking, oh, this role's not for me. And also limiting phrases like junior and senior, highly experienced, avoiding that jargon was another one. And just understanding that a lot of people who are coming into this position from underrepresented groups have limiting beliefs about themselves. So I guess it's trying to understand those limiting beliefs and keeping it simple. If you are kind of asking for certain things, just think, is this absolutely necessary? Is this a deal breaker? And not trying to kind of pad out the job description with loads and loads of responsibilities, but just thinking about those core kind of tenets to the role that people kind of can relate to and can see themselves in. Because I think we do get into the habit of just being really kind of jargony and using language that sounds good but might not necessarily kind of talk to people from those groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, people might think, well, I don't know, because I'm used to using this language. I'm maybe not tuned into it, you know, kind of thing. And I would say to that, tap into your staff networks. If you've not got a staff network, get a staff network. Why not? You know, even if it's 2 people, let's just hold the space to say, let people can come together here. It doesn't need to be minuted and agendaed. It can literally just be, we're holding a space here for people to come together that are in our workforce. Then you've got a group of people that you can go, we're aware that actually our language that we use isn't that great. Can you help us out? Can you invite us along, or can we invite some of you along, you know, to a meeting and actually have that discussion? It's not that everybody has to have all the answers. It's how can we work together to get better outcomes for people in our communities ultimately. Thank you for that. Go on, Sue Scott, sorry.
All right. Hiya. So yeah, just to feedback some learning that we've done from the pathways to employment that you've been putting on, Jenna. I do feel that that connection with persona now is really building, and to feedback. So we at Berry Adult Learning Service, some of my courses, we have entry level, so level 1 health and social care. We do introduction to a career in care. So we've got persona come in and chat to our learners. So these are people that maybe are quite nervous about entering back into employment, not sure what the sector involves, the different job roles that are involved in that. So persona come in, and we then invite persona and anybody that wants to meet with persona to meet up in our building as well. So again, for the learners that have been on the course, having those initial then discussions, informal discussions, to set up volunteering opportunities with persona, actually for Sue from persona to come to adult learning where they feel comfortable again, has worked really, really well actually, and we've had some really great successes already with that. And so so it's about making the person feel comfortable. Again, it's volunteering opportunities, so it's that not straight in with employment because it might not be right for me, but they get a chance to try it first and go around all the different settings that they have to find out what part of the care sector it is that sort of really they have a passion for. So yeah, just wanted to feed that back.
That's great. Thank you. And that's what really excites me about my role, is that, you know, just kind of bringing people together, and then the action that can be taken from there that then subsequently has an impact on people's lives is great. It's really important to be kind of connected in that way, isn't it? And have that joined up offer. Brill. Thank you for that, Sue. That was really helpful. I'm aware we've got 9 minutes left. I have got a mentee question, which is about a pledge that I'd like people to think about. That is something that I can kind of share the link, and you don't have to necessarily be on the call. It is something that you use your mobile phone for. So just to give everybody a heads up about that, as it's quite evident, I've kind of done away with the presentation and skipped over the kind of other slides, but I did want to maybe just share, if it's all right, the kind of some of the work that we have done. She says struggling to find the page. Second. Might give you all a bit more of an insight to the paths to employment stuff. Okay, can someone verbally say that they can see the screen, see the what have we done?
Yep, can see it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. So I will read it out. Obviously, if you're really quick at reading, you can just crack on. But what have we done? We have done practical work to flip the recruitment process to support disabled applicants in the cleaning and catering service at Bury Council. Held three by next week, past employment events in Bury to create opportunities. That's what Sue was talking about, using our partners to create this event that's very much about recruitment, but also has the other elements in of volunteering and training, like we said at Bury Adult Learning Centre. So yes, come because you're thinking about a job, come because you're ready for a job, and then hopefully you can kind of have that. The unique aspect of that is that it's in communities and it's on a smaller scale, so hopefully that means that it's accessible to people that maybe might not be as comfortable accessing a busier, lot more footfall event. 3, a new approach, supported with a new approach at Persona Care and Support. They've not only implemented the questions beforehand, they've very much looked across their whole interview process, from the language, you know, all the things that we've discussed. Actually, they've implemented a lot of that, and what's great about that is that they're a small organisation, so they can kind of trial and test things, and then with the work that I'm doing across Bury and Rochdale, which will soon be scaled up to Oldham and Salford, we can kind of connect in to other services and share that. And I know that's happened with another service. I've connected Laura from Persona with someone from the Northern Care Alliance as well, so that's exciting. We've done practical work, bringing people together in Bury and Rochdale, in the process of creating a toolkit and communities of practice to support the toolkit. So not just a toolkit that will stand alone, but it'll be live examples of work that's currently taking place in our organisations, and as well as some case studies around the impact that that's had. And then we've also got, it's not potential, scrub potential out. We are expanding across Oldham and Salford. And then also, not to forget, the cross-organisation mutual mentoring scheme, which again, it is across organisations, across boroughs, so it means that we've got that shared learning. So great, this is what's going on over here in my work, what's going on over there in your work, and is there any way that we can kind of complement that along with the actual mentoring that's taking place? So some really positive outcomes that have come from that, and hopefully you'll see some of that information being shared in the next coming months. Okay, I'm gonna exit the slide. Has anyone got, oh, Sue Scott, have you still got your hand up, or is that my screen frozen? No, okay. Has anyone got anything that they want to add? I mean, I say that we've got 5 minutes left, and I'm sure that Sam will like to say something before we leave, which would be nice. But has anyone else got anything that they would like to ask or share before that? No? It's because your brains are whirring away of all the possibilities of how we could possibly be inclusive in our public services. That's what it is. That's fine. You should have my email, and if you haven't, then it's on the slide deck, which will be distributed afterwards. So please, if you think, whilst you're, I don't know, brushing your teeth, you think, oh, actually, yeah, I've got this thing that we do, and that's really good, or I've got that idea, send it over, let me know, let's stay in contact. That's not a problem. And I will, if you do want to add something, Sam or anybody else, Sue, then I'll put the Menti up after that. So before you all leave, I'll just put that all up, and you can see the pledges that are being made live.
I think the only thing I would say is two things I would say. One is thank you for coming. Hope you found that discussion interesting, and that if you take nothing from it, just take that point around, go back and have a think around what you do in your organisation. What could you do a bit differently? Some of this is not about grand organisational change. It's what's the slogan for ASDA? Every little helps. But everything you can do as individuals who support a recruitment process, the way you advertise a job, that's how we drive proper change across organisations and across systems. So please do think about that, your pledge, and what you can do. I think one of the things that we'll be taking forward to the next page of the process is a proper toolkit, and is a proper a community of practice, bringing together those who are involved in this type of work, and particularly looking across the 4 boroughs of Oldham, Salford, Bury and Rochdale. So if you're from one of those 4 boroughs and have got some great examples, please do share them with Jenna. Equally, if you're not in one of those boroughs and you've got some great examples, please do share them. We're not going to be parochial about it. The more the merrier, and I think we're all part of one great advantage system and all keen to share and learn from each other. So I will let Jenna have the final word, but a big thank you for me for coming along today and sharing your experiences, and I hope you found this useful.
I think the last word for me is just thank you very much for your time. I know everyone's really busy, but these are the things that actually really can make a difference in all the challenges that we face. So I will put the Menti up, and of course, like I said, stay in contact if you'd like to. I'd love you to make a pledge. Thank you.
Great, thanks Jenna. And just to reiterate, I'll send around the slides and the link to the session so you can share it with colleagues. And there'll be more bite-sized sessions coming up, so have a look.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
I am trying to put the Menti up, but it's not working, so I'll just leave it.
Do you want to send it round to me, Jenna, and I could share it with the email?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that'll be better. Sorry, I just couldn't find it on all my tabs that are open.
That's okay.
Thanks everyone for hanging on.
Thanks.